Everybody, welcome to one more round. We got Hank here with me today. So he's our producer. He's here every time. So he's had to hear me ramble on for 89 episodes now or something like that. So I was excited because Hank and I always have these really good conversations. A lot of times it's, here's he's setting up or, we're at lunch and, we'll talk about just all kinds of different things. We're talking about life. We talk about sometimes politics, sometimes religion, sometimes the things you're not supposed to talk about. Sometimes we talk about business. We talk about art. We talk about all kinds of things. So I thought it'd be kind of fun for us to just chit chat. But before we started this, we were just talking about. So I had my first hole in one a couple days ago. So it was on.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. It was on hole 7 on the White or Sky course in Ocotillo. That 9 holes, and it was cool because I was sitting there with one of my very good friends, Simon. He's an attorney that I've known for several years, and we like to play golf together. And then this random guy that was paired with us, Clint, who seemed a super nice guy. He actually owned 11 dominoes. Come to find out, he sold them in Oregon, and he's just retired. He plays golf, doesn't have a wife, doesn't have kids, he just plays a lot of golf.
It's amazing who winds up on the golf course with you guys.
It is, yeah. And so what was cool about it is so he hit first, and at this time, so it's a par 7. Par 3, number 7. But there's sand trap on the right of the green, and then there's water. Okay, so there's trouble, and it's a big green that kind of like slopes down a little bit in front, and that's where the pen was. So he hits first, says, "Yeah, I'm going to aim, right towards the left side of that hill, and then I'll roll it down," because he's played there many times before, and I have too, but I've never been that methodical about it. And so he hits his ball, hits it just a little too far left, and it kind of stays up there on the top. But it's still a really good shot. He's still got a birdie putt for about 15 feet, I'd say. And then Simon, we won't talk about Simon's shot, but it didn't go quite as well. And then I hit mine. I'm like, okay. He said to hit it kind of over to the left of the pen, have it slope down. Perfect. I'll do that. So I hit it, a pitching wedge, 146 yards up, and it goes sky high in the air, drops down. I'm like, oh, cool. It's going to be a pretty close birdie putt, and it starts to roll the hole, and I'm like, oh, awesome, really close birdie putt. And then it keeps going, and then doink. And I kind of freaked out a little bit. I was like, oh my gosh, what? It was surreal. Like I felt like I was dreaming. I almost pinched myself because it's one of those things when you play golf that you always hope happens at some point. There is no guarantee. I was talking to you about my longtime partner and great friend Eric, who he's probably a better golfer than me, I would say, on some days, and some days I might get him there, but he's been playing for 15 years longer than me. Still doesn't have one. In fact, he walked in yesterday. We were going over strategy. He's going to be helping, put together some of my team here at Arrive, and he literally walks in. He's like, "I hate you," and I'm like, "I know. I knew that was coming out of your mouth." He said, "Gary hates you too." Another friend of ours that plays. So it was pretty cool. But you had mentioned, I told you I had told my wife, and that she was excited, and you're like, yeah, that's cool that she's into things that you're into, and that all happened in COVID. Yeah. So we had gone to Las Vegas in COVID, and I took her out like with me on a round, and then afterwards we hit balls. And in COVID, if you remember, like that was one of the few things you can do is you can play golf, right?
Yeah.
You got to be masked up everywhere else, running around, but on a golf course, apparently, it's fine. You can sit right next to the person, and it made a lot of sense. But she hit some balls afterwards, and she hit a couple good ones. She was hitting with my clubs. And then she came back, and some of the girls in our neighborhood, because we live on a Cocopelli golf course, play. And she started, just going out, driving range with them, and she started playing. And then she got it. Like, she started to understand, oh, okay, this is fun. This is why he's gone for, she used to be like, why are you gone for so long? You can't take that long. And then she's like, oh, yeah. I get it now. And then she'll get out and she understands the same frustrations, that you get in golf. So it's kind of cool to have that. But
Yeah, absolutely. And not every relationship you have that partner who understands your frustrations, your high points. Bring them along with you.
Yeah.
Have them come along with you to the golf course, go fishing, whatever. Maybe they don't quite click with it, but they'll at least understand why you enjoy it.
Absolutely, and it's true. That's a very wise thing to say because when you have a partner, like, and you get married, I mean, nobody gets married to get divorced, right? You want to make sure that you guys are growing together. And we've been married for 18 years now. It'll be 19 in May, and we're different people than we used to be. Now, that's not a bad thing. I'm a better person than I used to be, and she's always been good, I'll say that. But like, we have different interests, but we've always kind of tried to stay in each other's lives on our interest levels as well as just raising a family and stuff, because yeah, I mean, you don't want to grow so far apart to where you have nothing in common. I do play golf with some guys that no, they love their family, they love their wife, but they would never take their wife out on the course with them. Like, it's just not. That's like, I have my things, she has her things, and that's not how I like to do life.
No, no. As a matter of fact, you want to do that with most people. If you're surrounding yourself with them,
Yeah.
you want to walk a mile in their shoes, especially if you're in business with them as a team lead. Part of what we do at my church is in the worship technology background. We have the different stations, and then we have a technical director who oversees and conducts them, much like a maestro. And so that technical directors, they can only come into that role after they've been in every other position for so long. So you understand this is why it's taking this person so long to click, what went wrong, this is how we can fix it. But if you want to understand, you want to grow with other people, and you want to just become a better person and understanding who they are, you want to do a little bit of what they do.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Like, anytime you can understand what it takes to do a job, certainly, and be in that role, and then you go into management, it's way better than just coming in and trying to orchestrate someone where you don't know exactly what their function is or what it takes to be that function in the job. I always tell people, when I started Aftershock in 2008, and it was literally me just designing whatever I could. At the time, it was like business cards. I learned to make websites
You had
and
a
that kind of
table
thing.
with your logo on it.
I did, yeah. That came later with Keepsake Woodshop. That we made that, but it was like me sitting on a couch just building this stuff. But then, okay, I understood graphic design. Was I good at it? No, I wasn't. But I knew what I was looking for. And then I did pay-per-click advertising, and pay-per-click advertising. I learned that. Hey, what's going on, man?
Sorry if I'm interrupting you.
Oh no, you're fine.
Just gotta get something from my folder.
Yeah, you're fine. That's it's Matthew. He's an advisor here at Arrive Financial. He's got his kids, but he's the man right there. He's the newest senior partner here at Arrive Financial. So anyway, back to what we were talking about.
Graphic design, learning it.
What's that?
Learning
Yeah,
your graphic
learning
design.
it. So I did everything, right? So I knew that position, and I did pay-per-click advertising. I was the one managing it all. I learned to build websites. I understood it. Eventually, I was able to hire people to do those things, but I knew what their job was. So I knew what kind of pitfalls they would have, what kind of issues they might have, but it helped me interview because I knew what questions to ask them of what I know they have to know to be in that position. So it was huge. And I'll never forget this. You'll appreciate this story. Are you a wrestling fan?
Not so much, but I get the appeal.
So I was at this event with Patrick Bet-David in Florida back in September with Jess, and he had The Rock on, right? That was like one of his podcast interviews. And it was cool because he had asked The Rock a question about Vince McMahon. And, you can have your feelings about Vince one way or the other, and, he's not a good dude, I don't think. It's my opinion. However, what was cool about it, everybody, Merry Christmas.
See you guys.
All right, I see ya. What was cool, so he said, well, let me tell you a story about Vince McMahon and how he helped me understand the business. So he comes in to Vince's office, and at this time he was negotiating his contract. And at the time, the highest paid guy in the WWE was Stone Cold Steve Austin. And The Rock was the superstar rising almost at that level, maybe some would say above the level of Stone Cold. But he was on kind of what you would call in the NFL a rookie contract, so to speak. So he comes in, and Vince says, how much would you like to make? Well, how much does Stone Cold make? He tells him, and it was like, I think it was like $2 million. Says, okay, well, I want to make 4. That's what he says. And Vince says, well, why do you want to make 4? And he says, well, I think that I've brought the value, and obviously I work very hard, and there's a lot coming up, and I think I provide that value to make that amount of money. He says, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. He says, well, I'll tell you what, before we finalize on a number, what I want you to do is I want to have you spend some time in the business behind the scenes, and I want you to work with all of our people, our CFO. I want you to work with the production and all that stuff. And then once you understand what it takes to run this and to make this a profitable business, then we'll come back and we'll come with the number. He says, okay, all right, sounds good. So The Rock goes out. He spends a couple days to see CFO, and he goes and sees what it takes to production. He gets to see what the rentals were on these huge coliseums, and how much ticket sales they had to do, and literally the business aspect of it. He said, it didn't take me very long. It was like 2 weeks. I came back to Vince, and I said, hey, Rock says, how about you just match Stone Cold? And he says, okay, yeah, I can do that. He says, how much do you think you'll make this year? I says, I don't know, normally I would have bonuses outside of my, current salary, so I don't know, maybe like 2.3, 2.5 million. Vince looks at him and says, you'll make $15 million this year. And he did, to the number. And what that taught him was that you really have to walk in the shoes of understanding how everything works before you can really say, hey, this is what I'm worth to the company. If you don't understand all the cogs to make the wheel go, you don't understand what your particular spoke is worth.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. When you're in a bigger machine like that, you have all these different people that, especially when you're such a big name as The Rock is to WWE, you don't understand those smaller cogs, all the other people who are being paid, and you don't also realize you're kind of dipping into their portions. Like, if you want a bigger portion, you're also restricting what other people can make. So it is a great tool to learn around you and just understand what the people in your life, in your business, what they do, how you could, if you needed to, step in to fill their shoes.
Yeah.
It's always a problem if you're, let's say, a working role and a new supervisor comes in who hasn't been in your role. You know that they're not going to understand the hours, why it's going to take as long as it's going to take. You want somebody with experience in your role.
Yeah.
Came to bite us in the butt a few times over at GCU because one of our supervisors who has been in our roles, we were saying, we're just not going to have the time to do this one job. He says, I've done your job, and I know there's going to be 3 hours where you're sitting waiting for the next thing to happen. You're going to go do the job. And we got the job done with 2 hours to spare.
Yeah.
So those sorts of things pop up, of course.
Yeah, and I mean, it all comes down with, that's where wisdom really comes. It's through experience, and then taking that experience and knowledge you have and then applying it to the future. That's really what wisdom is, right? And when you've done, the job, like what it's going to take, but if you haven't done the job, like if you're new in that job, you're like, oh man, it's going to take way longer. No. Here's the shortcuts. Here's what you're going to have. Here's how your time's going to be allocated. Here's where you can do that, which is super helpful. That's what mentorship's all about, right? It's helping you be more effective and efficient with your job. Whether you even know that you're not as effective and efficient as you should be. So you said that at your church, like the person that orchestrates all has been in every seat. What have you done over there? Like what's your role?
I am that person who has been in every seat.
You've been in every role.
Yeah, no. Right now, there's 3 of us. One of us is a full timer. The other 2, me and one other, we're volunteers. So it took if you're motivated, you can get into that seat within 3 months. But it doesn't come with any special privileges or anything. It just comes with more responsibilities. My role when I come into the church is I come in, I unlock everything, I start up the systems, and people come in, and together we all make it work. Because it's more or less just about knowing what everybody's going to go through. If somebody doesn't understand something, they're new to the role, you can show them, hey, this is what you do. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's one thing I've always admired about church is, for the most part, it's an all-volunteer army, right? And people that hear the word church, everybody has like their own vision of it, right? Some, Catholic, some synagogue, some, non-denominational, some Muslim, whatever that church means to them, right?
Right.
But you have a picture of it, and it's like, okay, I'm going to go, and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to hear a message, we're going to worship, and they don't really step back and think, wow, what all had to happen for this to take place? The volunteers.
Absolutely.
What each volunteer did. The kids ministry, who's taking care of the kids when, the parents are getting, the actual worship and the message. How do we, when we bring in guest speakers, what all goes behind that? What securities are in place? All the production that make everything look amazing. Like, who does that? And how is that orchestrated the right way? There's so many moving pieces to making that work, because week in and week out, there has to be a production on Sunday, or if you're, I think Muslims go to church on Sunday. I don't know
I
if
couldn't
that's
speak to
correct. But like, whatever day you go to church, that's production, and it's every week. It's not like we get a week off. Just it continues on forever. So it's pretty cool, and I think that's a good place for people to start and really understand what volunteering is all about, and what giving your time, because like you said, you're not being paid for that. However, has it benefited you and what you do in your career?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's built upon the experience that I take into my workforce, but outside of that, a congregation is built on sacrifice regardless. The reason I got into that role was because I had talents, and I was looking to put those talents to use for the Lord who gave them to me.
Yeah.
So I took them to the church. I was like, do you have a role that you could use this in? And they directed to me to where I would be best to use.
Yeah. No, it's true, and I mean, I've known you, I don't know, what, 3 years now?
Something along
Little
those
over,
lines.
maybe.
You've known me since I've been in my previous studio. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've seen your talents. Obviously everybody. The last two guys that have come in here, Dom, who was just on, Julio. They're like, hey, can I get your contact information? Because they know they know what it takes to be really good at what you do, and somebody who's just starting it out. Because it's not just coming up. It's not just setting up a camera, and putting on a couple microphones. It's a lot that goes into it. You want to talk a little bit about what goes into producing something the right way?
Oh, absolutely. But it takes a lot just to get that name built up. As a matter of fact, when coming out of film school, the biggest piece of advice I give to other people is go film. Go film for free. How did we meet, Josh?
We met originally at that event. What was it, like Hotworks or something like that? That they did.
The sweat sauna.
Yeah, the sweat sauna. And at that one, Jack was there, and I think you and Zach were there, and you were doing like a free little minute for somebody's business. Is that
Exactly.
right? I
That's
think that's
right.
how we met.
We went up to every vendor, every booth there, and we offered them a minute of just free advertising. You didn't have to pay us. We would even revise a little bit if you had some input for us. So we built relationships like that, letting people see our work, but also it just gives you a little bit more experience, because even if you mess up on a free project, it's a free project, but now you know what to do for when it's a paid project.
Yep.
So coming into this whole routine, we come in, I do set up the tripod, the camera, the microphone, but I also test to make sure that each microphone works. Right now, I can't hear how I sound, so it's going to be real embarrassing if I get off and it sounds jarbled or scratchy once this is coming off.
We'll blame it on the beard. It's a beautiful beard.
The best, no, not at all. No, but we come in, we set up this camera. We work together, you and I, Josh, and we have to make sure that the framing is right, that my foot isn't halfway off the frame to that direction,
Yeah.
that your head isn't being cut off with just a barber school haircut. No, it's coming together, making sure that it's appealing, and also we're making sure that this is shot in 4K, so that you, to take it into post, you'd come in and you can zoom in further
Right.
to what you want. How has that post come along for yourself?
It's been great, actually. So we use a couple of different softwares. So I use Opus AI and then Veed.io, I think it is. And Veed's cool because, like, if I see something when I take it in and I'm like, oh, I really like that clip, I will just boom, take it out of Premiere, make it into an MP4, throw that into Veed, throw a little caption on it. It takes 10, 15 minutes. But Opus is cool because it's an AI that you can put the entire episode when it's on YouTube, and it does its best to pull out clips from that. And what's nice is when I'm talking to someone like today, it'll have sometimes boxes that show both of you guys, or it'll pan back and forth when you're talking. And, sometimes it misses the mark on what's actually interesting and valuable out of that specific episode. But a lot of times there's some good stuff there. And if I really see something that's like, okay, I want that, I can always just go back into the full episode, take it, put it into Veed. So I utilize those things in post production. But it's cool, and that's the thing too. I don't think a lot of people know about me. I know how to do all of that stuff because that's just the way I learn things. I'm not a hey, you tell me how to do something type of thing and I'll just remember it. Like, I'm a hands-on. I always have been. When I learned to build websites, it took me months. I got this thing called Team Treehouse, which is like a subscription, and I spent, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 hours of learning in their modules and stuff, probably 1,000 cuss words if I'm being very honest, and screwing stuff up and all that, and what themes were with WordPress. Google AdWords, the same kind of thing. I became very good. I would put myself in the top 1% of people that know how to use that software, and I was able to train on that, but it was because I did it myself. Like, I really got in. So like the YouTube, pretty much built our channel. I've uploaded all that stuff, and I think there's something to that. I think if people want to be really good at things, eventually I do want to delegate all of that, but going back to our previous point, I want to know what I'm looking for, and I want somebody more talented than I am, and that's a huge point, because every position I ever hired for, they were more talented than me. It wasn't hard in the graphic design side to be more talented than me, but I at least knew what I was looking for and what tools and what skill set they had to have.
Exactly. You could pick out who was kind of just flubbing
Yep.
through it.
Yep, exactly. So, and it's important, like all the little nuances you talked about with the setting up and the testing the sound and all of that's important, because the last thing you would want is to sit here for, however long our conversations go, and we had a great conversation, and we get off and I look at it and I'm like, oh, man, we can't hear anything.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm gonna check okay, PAC's on, that's good. And like that's, the details are so important. I've heard the phrase like the devil is in the details. I don't necessarily understand that particular phrase. I think God is in the details. I think,
For sure.
now I could see where it comes across to where, like, if things that go wrong can be in not paying attention to the details. Maybe that's what it's trying to think. But it's so important to be detail oriented, and by nature, it's not exactly my forte. So I got to spend a little more time like looking at things, sometimes reading things twice, but that's what makes sure that you get an end result that's a product that you actually care about and like.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. I think the devil in the details thing, I think that feels more like it applies to fine print and things of that nature. Yeah, no, Idle Hands of the Devil's Playground
Yes.
is another one. There's a lot of idioms with the devil in it.
Yeah.
He's essentially been around this earth for as long as it's been around, so of course he's going to show up in small spaces like that.
Yep.
But no, if you work with something, you're more than likely going to not only understand how it works, how to fix it, you're also going to remember it much better. Like if you're going through a tutorial, you want that piece of software, that piece of equipment with you, so that you can follow along and do it as it's showing you off. Otherwise, it's probably not going to click as well.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you mentioned that, because last week, my wife Jessica, she has a business on the Bright Side. She's done extremely well. Like she ships peptides out all over the country, and like semaglutide and those types of things, and she really started, it was like just her, and then eventually her sister came along and started working with her, and Jillian's been amazing to help her. Man, like I was like, hey, you know what? I'm free hands. If I got time, you just tell me and I'll do it. So the other day she was teaching me how to put in orders in the system, and it's relatively simple, but there's 9 steps, right? There's 9 steps and different screens and stuff. So the first time she's like, okay, go here, blah, 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 do here, boom, boom, boom. I'm like, okay, all right. So then I watched her do another one. I said, okay, let me do one. She's like, well, I'm showing you. I said, no. I need to go in and do it. I need to touch and I need to tap. And I'm going to make mistakes, but then you can correct me. This is how you teach people. This is how you teach your employees. Because she's never really had employees, and she's good at everything she ever does. So and she's growing tremendously in this area. But like, because she's good at everything she ever does, it's kind of hard for her to not have people that are kind of up to her level all the time. So anyway, I go through it. I make a couple mistakes on the first one. I'm like, okay, awesome. I'm gonna do another one. I do another one. I get it right the second time. Boom. Now I'm trained, and that's an important way to do things with, especially when it comes to tutorials and softwares and hands-on stuff.
No, for sure. I mean, people learn all sorts of different ways, and that's also part of the problem when it comes to teaching younger minds. Is not all of them think the same way. Some people are note takers, some people listen, some people are doers. But it's this kind of mishmash of different minds, different ways of thinking that makes life so amazing. The people we surround ourselves with, we get different ways of thinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's important to fill your life with a diversity of minds so that not only can you learn a new way to think, you can understand when somebody is having a gripe, a quarrel, or even understand how to deal with this sort of person. You talk to them, you come at it from their viewpoint, and essentially it just grows who you are as a person to have these different thoughts.
Absolutely. And I think we all need to be open to that, open to having conversations with different people, because how they think is going to be different. How we learn, like you said, is going to be different. But I'll give you a really good recent example, like it just happened yesterday. So there's a friend of mine that I went to high school with. I haven't seen him in, I don't know, 18, 19 years. We've talked a little bit on Facebook and stuff. And let's just say we see the world differently when it comes to politics. Very, very differently. And it's because we see the world in a different way. However, we agree on a lot of things, right? And sometimes we spend so much time on things that we don't agree on that it's like, okay, well, let's step back and make sure that we understand the things that we do agree on. And then we can have discourse, because who knows, maybe I'm missing something. He's actually going to be in town. He lives in New York. He's going to be in town, and we're doing a poker game over at my house with some of the old high school buddies, and a guy who worked for me and was in business with me, Jason. And it'll be good. But I know we're going to have like these types of conversations, and I'm totally open to it. Like I don't need to agree with him, but he may have a perspective on something that I haven't seen, and why wouldn't I be open to that? Like that's how we all learn. That's how we evolve. And
Absolutely.
you got to be able to evolve your thinking when it comes down to it, because if I was like I was in my 20s, there's no way I would have the success I do at 41. And if I'm the same way I am at 60 as I am at 41, I'll never have the success that I need to have if I don't continue to evolve. So it's got to be that mindset.
No.
So how do you find you learn, by the way? Are you more audio or are you more visual?
I like to mix in a whole different mishmash of things, but mostly it's doing. Like if I'm doing something while I'm learning along to it, that's how it's sticking in my head. When I first got my job at GCU, I was reading through manuals, but while I was reading through manuals, I was also playing with the gear. I would read something and was like, I can do that with this? I'd stop, I'd go to the piece of gear and I'd do it and be like, well, I'll be. Something new I've learned, something I'm going to retain for a hot minute, and something new that I can apply that wasn't there before in the job position. So a lot of times reading through those manuals are actually a great thing to do.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like something new or something that you don't quite understand fully but's been sitting in the corner for 2 decades. You've got that piece of gear there, you're like, what does it actually do? And now you understand. No wonder it keeps breaking because I've been doing this with it when I should have been doing that.
Yeah. This actually reminds me a lot of a lesson my dad taught me early on in life. Anytime you get something, he always said, read the manual. You got to read the manual. My dad's a very interesting guy, an amazing guy. Very interesting in the way he thinks, though, because he took this test. I'll never forget it. There was this test, and it's like a cognitive test, and he's very smart. I think he kind of borderlines on that genius. But it was whether you see things spatially, whether you see things creatively. So, are you a critical, creative, or a logical thinker? And it mapped the brain based on all these questions and stuff. And he was dead center. It was dead center. My dad's an artist. Like my dad, paints, and he's amazing. He's always had that gift. Yet he was an engineer, and my dad is he is great at math, and he can do those types of things. So, when he always used to tell me, read the manual, I was like, okay, well, there's got to be something to it. So I always do, and there is not a manual I've ever read that I'm like, yeah, that was riveting information. But you go through it, and now you've just saved yourself sometimes a half an hour, 2 hours of time of trying to figure out something and those types of things. So, yeah, I'll never forget that lesson. But yeah, that's an I have to see if I can find that cognitive test again. It was cool. Like I've taken a bunch of IQ tests and stuff, but that one was neat. Have you ever taken something like that to where it kind of maps out like how your brain thinks on the creative side? Or?
Well, we did things similar to that in school. Would be like, what kind of thinker are you? Are you A or B? And teachers did that because they thought that perhaps they could assemble groups in a better way like that. If you understand how one person thinks or have a category on them, you can then generally plan around that. Personally, I've never been really a big fan of putting people in a box and then assuming this is how they must work because they are in the box.
Right.
That often limits my perspective on certain things, but perhaps it's just me misunderstanding how it's used.
No, I think it's something actually we can dive into a little bit because I agree with you. Early on in my business days, I read a book called Personality Plus. And so Personality Plus basically broke it down into 4 types of personalities. There was a peaceful phlegmatic, a powerful choleric, a perfect melancholy, and then a popular sanguine, right? So these are kind of how it broke down. And it was like, you have these characteristics, and sometimes there's a blend. And I'm like, okay. So the challenge is when I read that book, I started to try to compartmentalize people. And to your point, like you really can't do that, right? There might be times, certainly those that know me in a different realm, they might be like, God, the guy's got no fun in him. He's just drive. And then there's people who are like, God, he's the most fun person I know. Because, you got to be different people in different situations,
Absolutely.
But that book was interesting, and I did learn at least a little bit to kind of know where somebody naturally gravitates towards. But I would take that with a grain of salt, knowing that, okay, they could probably be, better in these areas. And then I would evolve. I'm sure you've, like the Briggs-Meyer, that was like another big personality test, and the DISC testing and all of that. And my challenge is certainly corporations that put that in place. Like one software we use called WiseHire, which is how like we get prospects for hiring and stuff. They have it to where you can take the DISC profile, and if you've ever taken it, the questions they ask there and how you rate yourself, it's very difficult to like say, okay, this is how I do it. Because if you really want to take that, you should take hours and hours to take that test, because you really have to think through some critical thinking on each question to know where you would identify. So like that, just off the cusp, I'm a 5 or a 7 or whatever it is. I don't think it does it justice. So when I get a score back and I'm like, oh, okay, this person is more inclined for this or that, it doesn't always translate. Some people take those tests of who they want to be, not who they are.
Yeah, it's more about being honest with yourself.
You're right, and that's why I don't put a lot of water in it. It doesn't hold a lot of water with me, because I do think most people actually take the tests of who they want to be, myself included. I know the first time I took the test, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of who I want to be. I didn't say that in my mind, but I'm like, yeah, I'm more that quality. Then looking back, I'm like, you liar, you were not that. That's not who you are. And today I know myself much better, but. They're interesting having those types of things in place, but they can be dangerous, I think.
No, for sure. No, I remember taking a psychology course in college. It was just mandated, but I took it, and there was a period where it was discussing different time periods of a person's life, and it said this is how a person's life is structured around. You got like, the infancy, you got, I can't remember all the technical terms for it because I've never been terribly into psychology, but I remember thinking, this is my life, just boxed out. This is what's going to happen. This is awfully depressing.
Yeah.
If everything that I've ever done or will do has been compartmentalized already, and was already decided based in this textbook, I don't want to be that.
Right.
No, and putting people in a box of that nature, we do it all the time. The second we hear somebody is on the right or on the left, already we've got a clear mental image. Person over here in the red cap with the gun under their belt.
Right.
No, not everybody is like that. Not everybody.
Blue hair on the other side.
Absolutely no. Everybody immediately shuts down, but then if you get surprised all the time because people then will have opinions or thoughts you didn't think they were capable of having because you've got them in their box already.
Right. You know, so Dom, who was just on before, he said something that was right in line with this. He was talking about how when he was in law school, how he ended up becoming more objective with things. He's like, I might have an opinion on something, but it forced me to become very objective and to be able to really see from somebody else's perspective. Because until you've walked in their shoes, like how on earth would you know why they believe what they believe? Now, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know if there is a right or wrong necessarily on how somebody believes. I know that the way I personally believe, I think that's the right thing for me, and I think it's a good way to live my life, but it doesn't make it right for sure, you know? So but I also come from a background where I was raised by my dad, my stepmom. My mom was still in my life as well. Good upbringing, you know, we were kind of middle class. So am I going to relate to somebody who grew up super wealthy in Scottsdale and had the same perspective and maybe pressures that were different, or someone that didn't have any money and maybe one person, you know, raising them in the family, or like Julio that was on a couple of weeks ago, and, you know, prison and all that stuff? Well, no, but that's why you have conversations, so you can try to be objective and understand, you know, where they come from and why that thought process is, and see if it's something that may be something you can adopt because you just never came from that realm.
No, of course, people have all different sorts of experiences that we personally could never even conceive or imagine, because you hear these outlandish stories, and I won't name examples, but when you hear these horrendous stories and you never think that could have happened to somebody you know, and it might very well might have.
Yeah.
But that sort of thing can deeply affect and change a person as well as their beliefs, and part of that is also something that is something we need to consider when being sensitive towards other people's. We're called as Christians not to judge so far outside of the church, because inside the church we're supposed to correct each other gently and guide them towards being more Christ-like. But outside of the church, we really have no realm, because who are we to judge?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes down to what grace is all about, right? It's not earning anything. It's not being someone that judges. Now, it doesn't mean that you put yourselves in harm's way if you see clear signs that maybe this isn't a person I need to be around, or those types of things. But not judging why they're like that. It's, you know, it is what it is. But also protecting yourself at the same time. But yeah, judgment, certainly snap judgments are usually very unhealthy for you. Like if you're just meeting a person for the first time, and you know, you look at their appearance and you wonder. So there was, I'll just give a recent example. It was somebody that we were looking at a specific position, and just the way she dressed for the interview was you know, appropriate, but like everything was very wrinkled and those types of things, and pretty eloquent. But then I found out where they were from, and you know, first generation here, and some of their background. I'm like, oh, well, you know what, this person probably just hasn't been taught some of these things. Like they're very smart. I can see that on paper. I can hear that in the way they talk, but how would they know unless they've been coached up on some of these things? But if I just took a snap judgment, I'm like, well, this isn't gonna work out. But who knows? Maybe that's someone I can mold and teach and guide and mentor into becoming much better than what they would be without that mentorship. So it's good to take the time to get to know people.
Of course, of course. And there's a difference between making a judgment on who a person is and seeing if they're the best fit for your job, of course. We had a fellow interview recently with us who he lived in another state, so he had to do the interview over Zoom. But the second he came over on Zoom, you could tell how much effort he was putting into the job because he had his background plainly visible with toys and other knickknacks all shown off there. He was in a t-shirt, he didn't have kempt hair. So of course there are times where you can probably make a judgment. This person, if they're putting their best self forward for the interview or not even taking the effort to put like an image forward, they're more than likely not going to be a good fit for the company here.
Right. No, absolutely. And it is very important to to put your best face on, so to speak, anytime you're meeting someone for the first time. You don't want to be, they always say that you can't make a second first impression. And that is true. It doesn't mean that somebody's exactly like you meet them on the first time. That's not true. I've learned that, not the hard way, but I've learned that, through meeting people. Sometimes like, God, I don't like that person, the first interaction. But then you get to know them, you get to know their story, and you're like, okay, all right, they've grown on me. And then, some people, I won't mention any names, have become very close friends of mine that I'm like, I didn't like you in the beginning because they didn't necessarily, they were a little gruff, didn't exactly put that, good face on, when they meet you for the first time, or just standoffish and those types of things. So, yeah, there's something to taking the time to get to know somebody, and some people just are not your cup of tea, so to speak.
No, and that's perfectly all right.
Yeah.
And sometimes the kindest thing you can do to that person is not interact with them in so many manners, because if the only thoughts you can think around them are negative and you have to hold your tongue a lot, sometimes the best thing, the most loving thing you can do is just to sort of hold yourself back from their presence or keep them somewhat out of your life. As Jesus says, he would rather spit us out if we're lukewarm. He would rather us be cold than lukewarm.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. Sometimes you got to jump all in and really, this is how I believe, and this is why, and this is, how I'm going to move forward. And if you don't like it, that's fine. But this is what I think is best. So, now you graduated 2 years ago?
I graduated in 21, so roughly 3 years ago now.
Okay. So what's and I mean, you're very good at what you do, and I'm not just saying that. Like, obviously your work speaks for itself. What's the job market been like for someone new out of college and going into a career?
Well, what I've learned is that it really is who you know. Every job opportunity I've been given, outside of some odd jobs that I was trying to use to build up my resume throughout college, coming out of college, everything I've been given, essentially is the term for it, has been through the grace of God and through the connections that I've made while in college. That is really what you need to do in college. You can't isolate yourself. You can't hide away in your dorm. You need to go to clubs. You need to go meet people, and you need to build relationships. If you can work in college, work in college. But what I really learned was, I'll give the timeline, so just show by example. Coming out of college, I was first invited to apply at a studio with Jack O'Hara. Yeah, a good friend of mine. We had worked together in college. He decided I would be a good fit for this, so he invited me and Zach along to come apply to the studio. I'm in the studio. I'm working for about roughly a year, and then my next job was offered to me by a fellow that I used to work with back at GCU. He invites me, he gives me the job, and I'm currently in that position now. But every other odd job, it's people calling me up, hey, I remember you doing this. Hey, would you like to come take a look at this? So not only is it about going out to do the stuff that you need to do work, do job, it's about doing it well.
Right.
Because people remember when you come in early. People remember when you stay late and do the job for no extra pay. People remember the relationship and just the interactions that they had with you. So it's about being a person that people want to be around, people want in their professional workspace.
Yeah.
And that's just how the cookie crumbles, how the moss grows. I'm just saying idioms now.
I know.
I'm running out of
I'm
things.
trying to think of an analogy. I don't have any more. Those that hit it. No, it's true. Like the people that you know. So I did go to college for like a year and a half at Chandler Gilbert Community College. It was great. I didn't finish, started a business, and my life kind of went that direction. But it is all about relationships. And although I didn't go down the college path, I literally, my living is made off of my relationships. And it's not meaning that they're all giving me money. No, a lot of times it's me introducing them to somebody and those types of things, but people remember it. So one of the practices that my wife and I have, and in this next year, we're getting even more intentional on, is we have people over to our house for dinner. Number one, I love to cook. I love it. I don't generally like to go out to restaurants a whole lot because I like to know what goes in my food. And I'll pat myself on the back. I'm a pretty darn good cook, right? But we have people over to dinner because then there's no time restraints, and it's a way to get to know each other, break bread, have fun, just have great conversation. But by intentionally doing that over and over, we've probably had 40, 50 dinners, and our goal this next year is to have 40 dinners over next year. We've created some tremendous relationships. And yes, some of it is definitely turned into business, right? Of things I can help with my skill set and career, whether it was my past life or now in the financial world. But that's how you grow, because it's not about now. It's like in 5 years, I might need their help and expertise, and I wouldn't know that if I'm not sitting over the kitchen table and learning more about what they do. Like one of my neighbors, he owns ketamine clinics, and we're actually working on getting Jessica's brother some treatments with him, because we've seen the data, we've seen the science on how good it can be for certain people from a psychological standpoint, and we think he's a great candidate for it. So, but had I not talked to him and had them over for dinner and understood that, and Dr. James has become a friend, I wouldn't even know that I could make that connection, or Jess wouldn't know to make that connection for her brother. So it's like being intentional with those relationships is extremely important. Reaching out to people and staying in touch, I think, is something that we can all do better. But yeah, you're right. I kind of hate the phrase just because it's so said so many times. Your net worth is your network, or your network is your net worth. It's not true necessarily. But I would say if you take out your net worth and you replace it with your richness in life, not your riches as far as monetary, yeah, I think your network is what enhances and enriches your life far more than not paying attention to that and growing those strategic relationships. So Jess and I this year, last year, I'd come out of obviously a very difficult time, and I don't need to belabor it on it. Health issues, died, blah, 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 right? So
The usual stuff.
yeah, the usual stuff. But I started a brand new career and a partnership here and at Arrive, and it's been amazing. But the word for the year for me was cleaning the house. And what that meant was, not that we have a dirty house, but it meant we didn't have much debt, but certain debts that we had, we were going to get rid of, making sure that we, paid off, our car, which we did, bank putting, extra money here and there to making sure that because I didn't make money for 7 months, while I was in the hospital and then, recovering and stuff. So making sure that we cleaned the house and that we had everything the way we wanted to, got her business, and she's done tremendous with her business, but I helped where I could there. And that was just the overall mantra. Well, this year, for 2025, it's building allies. That's what I've told her. I said, we're going to build allies. And I know that might sound like, what, are you going to war? No, we're not going to war. But to me, that means I'm building strategic relationships with people that I care about and they care about me. that eventually we can help each other in some way or another. And sometimes it's like, hey, maybe they're just a vacation family, a buddy of ours, or we play golf together, or maybe it's somebody that, Arrive Financial, our goal is to build $100 million company by 2027, and we're making strides to do that. Well, that means that there's people that aren't here yet that are going to be a part of that. Well, that means I have to be very intentional with my relationships of people I know, because you never know when that right person could be introduced. That's that piece, that function that we need here to grow, to our next level that we want to get to, and eventually that 100 million, valuation goal. So, building allies is what our goal is, and I shouldn't say goal. Derek Keller, he'll be on the podcast here soon. He says I don't like the word goals, which I think it's fine, but he said targets, right? Targets, because you hit targets. I like the way he said that, so I'm like, that's our target for this year.
And target is much more specific. Like
Yeah.
you're hitting this goal is you're reaching something, and it could be more of a loose term, but
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. So on that same line, I have to tell this story because it really kind of blew me away. So a friend of mine and somebody I worked with for several years. So I was originally the CEO of HOA.com when it was new. Then I had left, but Brandon Barnum, who I had worked with over there, we sat right next to each other at Derek Keller's 2-day seminar last week, and it was phenomenal. Derek did a great job. It was strategic planning for 2025, but Brandon and I, we really had kind of lost touch, but we spent 2 days together, and one of the conversations we had is he is friends with Mark Victor Hansen, which he was a Chicken Soup of the Soul guy. He has a lot of books, very, very well-known guy. And Brandon's known him for, 20 some odd years. And at that point, 20 years ago, he had challenged him to write down 100 goals, right? 100 things that he wanted to accomplish in the next year. And these are very random things, right? And one of the things that he said was he wanted to meet Bono, right? Right.
It's a very strange goal.
Right. Well, right. But that was the thing. It wasn't like I want to just make this amount of money. Sure, that was one of them, but he wanted to meet Bono. Literally within 6 months of him writing that down, he met Bono. So now Brandon didn't challenge me to do this, but I'm like, oh, what a great idea. So I'm sitting down on Tuesday night, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start towards 100 things that I want to accomplish in this next year. So I start writing down all kinds of stuff in my little spreadsheet on my phone. And one of them was to make a hole-in-one. And I literally, the next day, I went out and I told the story in the beginning. That's when I hit my hole-in-one. The very next day from when I wrote it down. So, I don't know, it's a big coincidence maybe, but there is something to writing things down. And that helps with it coming to fruition.
Yeah, some people call it manifesting. Some people, I like to think of it as God intervening.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's a story that my minister used to tell within the church about telling a non-believer to pray every day for something specific for like the next 6 months and see if anything came out of it. And he was praying specifically for an African country, I believe it was Uganda. So pray for help in Uganda. And he prayed, but eventually somebody within his life appeared who had connections in Uganda, and he was able to then begin helping the Ugandan people through that way. So it's moments like this that make life feel like a simulation,
Yeah.
for better or for worse. If you have something in your mind's eye, let's say you buy a car, you start to see that car everywhere.
Yeah.
So once something comes into your purview, once you have it in your mind, you're going to start seeing opportunities for it, looking for it. So I don't know about your hole-in-one. I don't know how you can find an opportunity for that.
It's very strange, right?
That is a wild coincidence, yeah. But no, once it's in your mind, once it's in your sight, you're going to see the doors that might lead to it.
Yeah, they call it the reticular activating system in your brain, and it's like if you just bought a brand new blue Mercedes, right? And you're like, oh, I haven't seen many of these, and then you're driving around, and then next thing you see, you've seen 4 blue Mercedes that day because now you're attuned to it. So there's something about writing down an intention, right, of what you want to do, because then it allows your brain to start seeking that out. Now, the hole in one, I'm going to chalk it up to it was a fluke. Now, it was a good shot. It's where I wanted to hit it. Was it my intention to hit a hole in one there? No, it really wasn't. It was to be in birdie position, right? But I'm interested now because I only have 47 of them written down. Or, I'm sorry, 49 now. And because I was running out of things, but I'm like, okay, I'll just continue on. My goal is to have it done, or my target is to have it done by the end of the year, 100. That one I now have highlighted in green because it's done. But there's something to sitting down, taking time with your own thoughts and saying, what I really want. Like one of them is to, so Jessica and I are both fans of learning, right? And to continue to learn, because the person I am today isn't the person I need to be in 5 years to grow the type of company that we want to grow, right? So we're going to the Vault next year, which is in Florida with Patrick Bet-David. And this year we went in as VIPs, but they have the CEO tickets. And the CEO tickets are substantially more money, but there's a lot more value to it because you're around people that are in different spheres, a different level in life. And so I wrote that down. I said, we're going to buy CEO tickets next year for both of us. And another one of my things was to have the dinner with Patrick Bet-David. Well, part of what's included in the CEO ticket is to have dinner with him. Why? Because he's one of the, in my opinion, and of all the people I've listened to, he's one of the greatest thinkers that I've listened to. And I've heard him talk about all kinds of different things. And I would love to just be able to pick his brain and ask some specific questions for me. Because he's from Iran originally, moved here when he was 10, seen a lot of life, never grew up with money. Got in the insurance business, started the insurance business last year after, 17 years, I think it was. He sold it for $250 million. And that sounds impressive. Great. Well, if you listen to his podcast, he's also interviewed Kobe Bryant, The Rock, Donald Trump. I mean, all of these people he's gotten to know. And the way he asks questions and the way he learns, it's fascinating to me. He's the best interviewer there is, in my opinion. Joe Rogan's there. But if you were to say, hey, this has to be an hour and a half, I'm going to put Patrick Bet-David there because Joe and Rogan, and I love his podcast, 3 hours is what he needs. That's how he marinates on things and nuances. But so having dinner, I was like one of them. So challenge to you guys. Write down 100 things that you would like to accomplish in 2025. And it can be as simple as, like one of them was, playing tennis with my kids, once a week. And I learned this too, like not saying I want to do this every single day, rather than, let's say you want to do something every day, 365 days, right? Well, that can be challenging because, you may get sick, something might happen. But you can say, I want to do this 365 times next year. So it gives you the ability to make up if you do miss a day, and those types of things. So I think it was an interesting thought that was passed on to me that I've adopted. So.
No, it's a great point to you for not setting such a huge goal off the bat like that, and including those smaller goals on there. What else is on that list? Like, are you gonna anything smaller for us?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of small things. Let me pull it up real quick.
Because if you've got something massive or your list is just big things, you're gonna see a lot less success, and you're gonna feel a lot worse about yourself if you're not getting these goals done.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm being very transparent and candid on this. Not that I'm not always, but yeah, it's like one is, so I want 10 producing advisors that personally, I work with. So I want to take a trip to New York with Jessica next year, CEO tickets to the Vault, earn $500,000 in commissions through this, Napa Valley trip with Jessica, family trip to Nashville. I want to meet Devin Booker. I want to do 75 push-ups in a row. I got close. I think I got 72 back in COVID. And then, with my health decline, now it's on the upswing and I'm back. I'm very strong, but I could probably only do maybe 60 right now in good shape.
That's still
so
pretty
it'll
good.
take a little training. Bench press my body weight 20 times. Have Charlie Kirk on the podcast. I'd love to pick that guy's brain. He's one of the most brilliant minds of his age that I've ever heard of.
We had him come to GCU And funny enough, our mascot got in a little bit of trouble.
Oh, yeah?
Because it's a guy in a suit. Nobody knows who is in the suit. It's just a suit for all they know. But he was he was making the security very uncomfortable by
Yeah.
coming in and doing mascot things where he's like playing around with the crowd and things. But they did shoo him away because they were making him uncomfortable.
Yeah, and he was single-handedly, I will say it, single-handedly, he was the guy that helped that younger vote get done. All right, one second.
Doorbell.
We'll be right back. Oh,
That was correct.
what's that?
Correct?
No. This is Arrive Financial.
C11.
No, this is C330. Right
Okay.
there. Yeah, C300.
Thank you.
Yeah. C100. This is C100. Anyway, sorry about the interruption.
Charlie Kirk,
Yeah.
Young Minds.
Yep. See, that's one thing I love about Hank is sometimes these things will happen when we're on the podcast, and I'll be like in not La La Land, just trying to get back to where I was landing the plane, and he usually can trigger that. But yeah. So yeah, Charlie Kirk. So there's just a bunch of different things, like speak in front of 1,000 people, write a book, dunk a basketball. I've been able to dunk a basketball since I was like 17 years old originally, but I did it again in 2020. I was in the shape to dunk a basketball.
We're talking about standard court, yeah.
Standard court,
We're
yeah.
not the tater tot
Nope.
on the front, yeah.
No, standard court, and I haven't even tried, but I know that I'm getting my strength there to where with a little bit of training I should be able to do that. 100 ice baths. It's a dumb goal, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm not going to film it, by the way. You can do ice baths without filming it. I have to say that because I see them all the time, and it's like, okay, you don't need recognition for your ice baths. I'll get off my soapbox there. 100 5-star reviews for me at Arrive. Teach Joshua to drive. Take my father-in-law and my stepdad on a fishing trip. They both love to fish. I mean, there's a whole bunch of memorize 12 sets of Proverbs, read Bible 7 times a week, 12 72-hour fasts, have Pastor Terry on the podcast. He's been my pastor for, going on 13 years now. I've been going to the same church for 21 years. And, I've gotten to know him a little bit, obviously, but not like I would like to sit down with him. And this is, he's a very accomplished man, a PhD. He's met the last 3 presidents, and he's gone. He was at the prayer breakfast with Donald Trump in 2016 with a whole bunch of other pastors in the Oval Office. He got a chance to meet Obama, and so, he's on a different level. He's been on the council for the governor. He's worked with Jan Brewer, putting administrative things in place, from a faith-based thing. So, Pastor Terry Christ is very accomplished, and he's sometimes from me to that door speaking, and I'm like I need to know him better.
Of course.
So these are all the things. The exercise itself is cool because it makes you think outside of your daily thing, and why not? There's nothing. Be audacious with it if you want to. I'm not saying I'm earn $100 million next year. Like that's not even a goal. Like I wouldn't want to earn $100 million next year.
You're getting that in such a short amount of time. How are you earning it?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So unless I start, selling, we won't go there. But that's the thing about the exercise. It makes you start to really spend time with yourself and what are my desires? What would I like? What would I like for my family? Like there's a bunch, like I said, play tennis with Zachary, and one of my goals this year was to coach his team, and I did, and it was very fun, and it was like a cool bonding experience with us. I don't know if I'll ever coach again. I enjoyed it. Probably yelled at them a little too much, but they deserve it. I'm nothing compared to the coaches they're going to face in the future. So I just thought, I was getting them prepared.
Just toughening them up a little bit.
Exactly.
No, you ever hear that song by Toby Keith, My List?
Yes.
Beautiful song. I have that as my ringtone in the morning when I wake up. And funny enough, whenever I set something as an alarm, I get upset at it. But this one, it just brings me calm. It brings me joy. And it reminds me, Small things matter throughout the day. Go for a walk, say a little prayer, take a
Yeah.
deep breath of mountain air.
Yeah. No, that's very good. You want to hear my life hack on my alarm?
Let me hear it.
So I think it was my former partner Matt that turned me onto it. So Matt's a tiny bit OCD. Sorry, Matt, if you're listening to this. But he started to automate his entire house, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. And he had a light alarm. So it was just like a light that would like gently kind of wake him up, right? And he tells me about this. So I find an app that literally does that. And you can set it. So 20 minutes before you wake up, the light just starts to gently turn on. And you don't wake up to any noise. And if it does get to that 20 minutes and you haven't woken up yet, it's very soft, and you can choose what it is, like little tiny birds in the background, and it wakes you up without being like startled. I've found that's the greatest thing for me.
That sounds amazing. I remember the podcast that you did with, who was it? The mattress company?
Oh yeah,
The sleep
yeah, yeah.
expert.
Yeah, that's
One
right.
of his tips was just slowly like start turning on the light in the
Yeah.
morning. And that's what I do. Like 20 minutes before I have to get up, I turn on the light and I'm laying in bed for another 30 minutes, but the light's on. I'm not going back to sleep.
Yeah, no, that was with JD. Yeah, of Tufton Needle at the time. He was the head of sleep for Tufton Needle. He's moved on to some other things. He's still in the sleep realm, but
Beautiful.
yeah, if you guys ever want sleep hacks, go back to that episode because that was really good.
Nappuccino.
The Nappuccino. Oh my gosh, I've done that. Have you done it?
I've done it. It's
Yeah.
a great nap.
So for those of you who don't know what a Nappuccino is, basically, what happens is when you take a nap, you generally want to keep it to like 20, 25 minutes, right? And the whole purpose of taking a nap is to burn off what's called adenosine in your brain. And that's like the mental fog. It's kind of what adenosine is, right? So you take that quick little nap, it burns that off. But the Nappuccino is you take a shot of espresso right before you take a nap because the caffeine doesn't kick in right away. So by the time you're waking up in that 20, 25 minutes, now you got the adenosine burned off and the caffeine's kicked in, and boom, you're ready to go. So the Nappuccino.
The Nappuccino. It's fantastic. We need to take more naps as a society.
I nap almost every day, and partly post transplant. That was something I needed certainly in the beginning, but like now I just find I'm better for my family, my clients, myself when I'm always on, and it's never terribly long. Usually at the max I'll ever go is probably 30 minutes, but usually 20, 25 minutes just to, again, burn off that adenosine, wake up, go do something, but then I'm clear. So naps are important. There's entire
Absolutely.
countries that like take naps at the same time.
I can't really quite think of that. I can only think of the tea time guys up there, the British.
Yeah, well, I know. So in Mexico, it's a common practice
Really now?
for people to nap every
Huh.
day. Yeah. I don't know if it's all in Mexico, but there's parts of it. Yeah, it's just a common practice.
You know what? I respect it. It's also, I also think there's a danger building a routine so strict. You think this is my time, and if something interferes with that time, we get a little cranky.
Right.
Because it's our time. It's how dare you invade my space?
Yeah, you got to be able to adapt. So I'll go. Well, I'll start with the thought of the morning routines, right? So go on Google, put in morning routine. You'll see 100 different people. I got to do this, that, right? It's fine, whatever you got to do. However, when you get so dogmatic with what you do consistently, I got to do this for 10 minutes and 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. Eventually, you're not going to be able to do that on certain days, and then you're going to be pissed off for the rest of the day because you didn't get that in. You're going to feel like that's what caused your day to be bad.
My day is ruined. My coffee's gone.
Right. So I have a couple of things that I do in the morning, but they kind of happen at different times. Sometimes I got to take my kids to school because Jess is busy working. But like generally I have 4 eggs in the morning. Does it have to be 4? No. But I have 4 eggs in the morning. That's what I eat. And then I generally will make a cup of cappuccino, or I'm sorry, an espresso, my little Nespresso. Do that, take my shower at some point. But that morning I may go to the gym if I don't have appointments right in the morning. I may go to the gym later. I'm very flexible on those types of things. So in my nap, I may nap at 10:30. I may nap it too. I may not have a nap. But it's like being flexible with it, but knowing that you kind of want to have these things to happen during the day to make sure you're functioning at the highest level. That's healthier in my opinion than
Yeah.
being so dogmatic and how this, I got to have an ice bath at 6:30 in the morning for 5 minutes, or I just am crazy. Probably not.
No.
So
No, I like to think. When I wake up about maybe by noontime, I would like to think it's a good day. I woke up and I felt the cold air in the window on the drive home, or I woke up, I had a coffee, but I like to generally think I did something. It's a good day. Now, sometimes, of course, things are going to intrude. I woke up 5 minutes late, but you know what? There was a little traffic. It's finding little things like that to just make your day
Yeah.
better. Yeah.
yeah, and really being grateful for things. There's a lot of people that live by the gratitude journal and writing the things down, and I think that's a great practice. But being intentional and saying, man, what am I grateful for these days, today? Because there's so many things like you're saying, like just a cold breeze on your face, you're driving home. Seems so simple, but yet it made you feel good at the time,
It
right?
did, yeah.
And there's so many things I think that happen in life that if you're not really present and paying attention, that you can appreciate if you choose to, but being aware of that and getting your reticular activating system going to work for you on the gratitude side, it makes everything better in life.
No, absolutely. I mean, we're filled with cliches of this podcast, but it's stopping and smelling the roses.
Yes.
Yeah, so like actually taking the time to just appreciate those smaller, finer details in life that just really make it a lot better.
Absolutely. And hey, life is sometimes going to be challenging. You're going to go through, sometimes it's monetary, sometimes it's with relationships, sometimes it's with health. Those are probably the three biggest, challenges that you can bucket things into. And it happens. It is what it is. And sometimes it comes out of nowhere. But there's always something to be grateful for. And there's always, and by doing that, it allows you to kind of refocus and then handle the problem, which is nice. But I'll never forget, there was a time in like 2018, 2019, we went through a really difficult struggle with Aftershock, at that business. We hadn't gone through a merger, and it was just challenging. And eventually everything was great, but there was about a 2-year challenge where it's like every day I felt like I was going to war. And I don't know any other way to say it. Like, it was like, I'm trying to make sure my people are paid. I'm trying to make sure that there's food on the table for my family, trying to, get, new clients to be able to, get things going. And it was just, I was, again, I felt like I was going to war. But at that time, I heard Jim Rohn, and I was like, I need positivity. And Jim Rohn is amazing. He's actually one of the guys who originally spoke into Tony Robbins' life, and Tony Robbins attributes to a lot of the things that he has expanded on, right? But he talked about winter not lasting forever. And the way winter doesn't last forever. He's got the very specific tone in how he talks, and but I remember that thinking, yeah, that's it. I'm just going through a winter right now. Eventually, spring will come, and I will enjoy spring.
Of course.
But I'll know that eventually there will be a winter, and it's okay. I'll make sure that I have warmth, and I'll get through it again. That's just life. But never lasts forever.
Yeah, C.S. Lewis says that God uses the troughs to bring us close to Him as a gentle reminder that we need Him. And for those who don't have God, of course, you can still take joy in the little things that you do in life and just kind of try and find a positive line. Now, there are things so horrible, not everything has a positive line. But,
No, absolutely not.
but sometimes it's just, you got through it.
Yeah.
That's the positive line.
Yeah, no, there are some things that happen to you in life that it's not right.
No.
It sucks, and there's nothing good about going through that. It's just like scars on your body, right? There's nothing good about a scar, but it is a story, and it's something you can learn from. And even if you were wronged completely and didn't deserve any of that, you go about life, and what sometimes it teaches you is you're freaking resilient, and you can get through anything. I didn't deserve to go through what I went through, with the whole dying, twice, heart failure.
Here he goes with the dying again.
Yeah, 2 months in the hospital, having to have a heart transplant at 40 after being very healthy. I worked out every day. I ate healthy. I didn't deserve that, but it's okay. God was with me, and it did bring me closer. I've always been a strong believer, but it would strengthen that relationship.
Absolutely.
And it honestly put me in a different realm of what I wanted to do and accomplish by getting this, this new chance of life, right? So, yeah, it sucked. Would I go through it again? No, I wouldn't choose to go through that again if I'm being very honest. Somebody had to die. I talked a little bit about it on social media. Abraham, he's 16 years old. He didn't deserve that.
No.
There's nothing about what, that. So.
And you received a letter recently.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I received a letter originally in December of last year from the donor's mother, and it was very heartfelt. And at this point, I think he passed away on October 2nd of last year, and then I had my transplant on October 4th. So she was only about 2 months into this process of being without her son, because it was sudden. So she wrote, told me a little bit about him, and I found out he was boxing, and there was so many different similarities of just who he was and things he enjoyed and things I enjoyed. I mean, my podcast is called One More Round. He was an amateur boxer. Like literally, One More Round came from Rocky, and I've talked about that before. But then I wrote back, and I didn't hear anything back, and I just kind of figured that, that's the hardest thing that a parent can go through is losing a child. I know some dear friends that have lost a child through various different situations, and they're never the same. There's that missing piece, right? And so I figured that's probably she was going through, and I'm like, I'd love to hear from her sometime. I'd love to meet her so I can thank her for just the grace that was given to me. Because the purest form of grace is he did nothing wrong, I did nothing right, but I am here, and it was him that allowed me to live, right? So I got a letter from her, a second letter, on 2 days before Thanksgiving. And it was a very sweet letter, and it was just she was talking a little bit about her journey, and she apologized for not reaching out sooner because she'd got my letter. I'm like, wow, I can't believe she's apologizing, but she's been praying for our family, and it just seems like a very, very sweet person. But she included a picture, which I have on my social media. You can see I talked a little bit about this, and then also a keychain that was given to everybody at the funeral that had 2 boxing gloves on it, and it had a cross on the boxing gloves. So. It was great to hear from her, and we contacted her yesterday, and we're going to be. I'm going to get an opportunity to meet her and give her a big hug, and I guarantee I'm not going to keep it together. In fact, I was with Eric yesterday when Jessica called me and said that she'd made contact, and Eric overheard the phone and said, yeah, I'm not going to be able to keep it together. And he said, yeah, you have no chance, and it's true. It'll be very, very emotional, but. Hopefully a little bit of, I don't want to say closure for her, because there is no closure for that, but maybe an insight to, wow, this is part of the legacy my son is leaving. Because I may have tomorrow, I may have 40 years. I think I'm going on a 40-year run. I'm going to do something special, and I wouldn't be able to do that without her son. So,
No, it's a fresh look on life to be given that second chance, but. Yeah, he's a part of you.
Yep, for sure, for sure. And on a lighter note, so he was Hispanic, right? Mm-hmm. And a good friend of mine, Sergio, we've been friends for 10 years or whatever, and but he had been out here in, I think it was January or December. He contacted me. He was like, hey, I'm coming in town. You want to grab lunch? And Sergio, he used to be with Freddie Mac, and at the time he was brand new, starting something called the National Hispanic Construction Alliance, and he was telling me a little bit about it, and we were just catching up over lunch and stuff, and he's like, you should consider being on the board. And I'm like, I'm white. And he's like, no. But you have some different business perspective and all that. Well, so last night was our holiday party. So I've been, with the board for a year and with the National Hispanic Construction Alliance. And it's great because the organization itself helps people in the construction world that are Hispanic to learn more, to get up one more tier, from swinging a hammer to contractor. It's an incredible organization. In fact, we're going to have some people on there on the podcast from there. But the thing that I appreciate, and I was joking about, I said, well, I am part Hispanic because Abraham was Hispanic, so I have a piece in me, and
You have the heart of a Mexican.
I have a heart for Mexican, yeah. So, but yeah, it's been an interesting journey so far, and I can only imagine where it's going to go. I think life is good. We'll all have struggles. We'll all have different paths and stuff we go down. But for me personally, I've never been more clear on what I want to do on a daily basis, what I want for my family, what I want to accomplish, and really the vision for how that kind of plays out. Sure, things will change, but
Sure.
it's nice having clarity.
Yeah, and I mean, the best way to make God laugh is to tell him your plans.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
We'll see what the future holds.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, this is great, man. I'm glad we got a chance to do this, and we've been talking about it for a little while. We'll probably make this like a once a quarter thing,
Why not?
Yeah,
At some point, we should probably have Zach on here too.
Yeah,
I know you did that podcast with him, and I was sitting behind the camera as well.
Yeah, that's right. Gosh, I forgot about that. Yep, had him on. Jack's been on a couple times.
Yeah.
He's doing great.
He's been all over the place.
Yeah, Jack's making his way in the world, man. I saw he got to meet one of his heroes.
Yeah, one of the
in broadcasting.
sportscasters. I can't recall his name.
I can't recall his name, but apparently, like, he called I think it was the Yankee games for forever. Because Jack, I
do that
believe,
too.
is called something like 800 like 800 games in a row for the Yankees. Like, that's amazing. So I could have that wrong. Sorry, Jack, if I do, but I'm pretty sure that's what you said. So it's cool to watch his dream kind of come true, that he's really worked hard at.
It started in his mother's literal basement. That was their first podcast together, and he's been running with it since.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, shout out to Jack. He's a great guy, and kind of, I met you, him, and Zach in the same day.
Same time, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I would not have met you if it was not for Jack and his sponsorships.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot about that. He was a sponsor of that. So, or he was paid to be there, wasn't he?
I don't know if he was. Yeah, I think you're right about that.
I think
because
so. It was like
was it Hotworks was sponsoring
Yeah.
him, and he would do their read from time to time.
Yeah.
Man, he had a lot of great connections. He did the Mayweather's fitness gym too.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. That's awesome, man. Well, yeah. So we'll do this again. This will be the last podcast for the year, guys. But Merry Christmas to you if you're seeing this before Christmas. If you're seeing this afterwards, hope you have a blessed day. And we will talk to you soon.
There we go.
All right. That's great.
Not bad.
Dang. We went a while.
We did. I didn't expect it to go as long as it did. Not as a bad thing, of course, but once we get on a topic, Josh, it tends to just keep going.